Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
We're back with more live from the Heartland for the week of January 25th. I'm Michael James, and I hope you had a nice little break between our previous guest, Heather Booth. But now we're bringing on someone who I don't know, but I'm looking forward to knowing him, although he might have been a customer at the Heartland Cafe back in the day. So our paths certainly have crossed. And a lot of people I'm running into, all my old comrades, sisters and brothers, they're liking this guy. His name is Nick Ward, and he is a candidate for the aldermanic position in the 48th Ward in the great city of Chicago in the county of Cook. Good morning to you, brother.
Good morning. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. And, like I said before we got on live here, the Heartland Cafe was really a meaningful place for me as a young person new to Chicago. So thank you for all of that.
That was part of the goal, was we were going to turn people on to good things and promote the causes. And, when we opened it, it wasn't as much about healthy food as having a place where we could develop cadre or organizers out of. So, we wanted people to have be able to serve the community, make a living, and do political work. Later, we would say their art, their family, etc. Enough of that. You're the guy, you're running, you have these real nice orange and black signs all over the 48th Ward, I've been noticing as I cruise around town. We could talk a little bit about you, but I'm gonna let you do that. Let's start off with you talking about the 48th Ward, where it is, who lives there, what goes on, what are the issues?
Yeah, okay. So I know that there's some folks who follow the show who maybe aren't in Chicago. So I'll kind of, make sure that we understand what we're talking about here. So if you're looking at a map of Chicago, put your eyes northward and towards the lake, and you'll find the 48th Ward. So it encompasses a couple of different neighborhoods, parts of Uptown on the southern end, and then it runs through all the way up to Devon Avenue and encompasses a lot of Edgewater. And then it also takes a little bit of this business district called Andersonville, which is this, small, like localized businesses, kind of walkable community. So the ward itself is pretty distinct. It's one of the most socioeconomically diverse wards in Chicago. We've got corridors, the corridor that I live on called the Kenmore-Winthrop corridor, which is a mixture of like large apartment buildings as well as some condo buildings. We've got the architectural vernacular known as the 4+1s, which I have a soft spot for. What that means is parking on the kind of ground, the basement floor with 4 floors above it. And then if you go east along the lakefront, that's primarily condo buildings. So there are these large high-rise condo buildings that run along the lakefront with gorgeous views. I was in one last night for a supporters meet and greet, and just beautiful, beautiful opportunity to see the lake. And then when we turn our attention west, which for Chicago listeners is going to be west of Broadway, we've got a collection of single-family homes, as well as anywhere from 2 to 3 to 6 and 8 flats. Again, the kind of classic Chicago architectural vernacular. But the people who live in the ward are working class people. It's long been a place where restaurant workers, nurses, artists, teachers could settle, rent affordably or afford to own sustainably, and really make a life for themselves. That is becoming a little bit more difficult, as it is everywhere. And so one of the biggest parts of this campaign is really thinking through how we make sure that the ward remains affordable for everyone. And that intersects with so many things. We have great schools in the ward. But because of the way that funding is structured, great schools have to have students in them. We need to make sure that our schools are fully funded, fully enrolled, to be able to make sure that we can support them. And so that's part of part of what we're looking at right now here in the ward. And then one thing I'll say too, that, it doesn't really get brought up, I think, a lot when we talk about the 48th ward, but we've got some real infrastructure challenges, and right now, the CTA is building a new red line. It's called the CTA RPM project. RPM stands for Red Purple Modernization. So it's taking some of the old CTA infrastructure that's 100 years old and updating it so it doesn't fall apart, which is a huge project, and it's really exciting. When it's going to be completed, it will be a fully modernized, public transit arm. But another thing that we have is we've basically got a couple highways that run through the ward. And that presents a lot of challenges for the people who live in this community, challenges related to traffic and congestion, challenges related to people being able to feel like they can safely walk across the street. And so that's something that, it is really prominent here in the ward, and it's really distinct, and it's something that we all have to work on, and that's what I'm excited to work on. Yeah, sorry, I went long.
Well, that's good. I like it when people ramble on. Which highways are you talking about? Are you talking about Ashland Avenue? You're talking about Clark Street? You're talking about Broadway? You're talking about Lakeshore Drive?
Yeah, so basically we're talking about, Lakeshore Drive, slices up the lakefront. It ends in the 48th ward, and then there are access points that get commuters to Broadway. And then there's also Ridge Avenue. So right. Ashland isn't in the ward, but Ridge kind of slices right through the community. And when I talk to folks, especially the folks who live on Ridge or near Ridge, the number one thing that I hear from our neighbors is how afraid they are of how fast the cars can go. And
I think cars in general are driving awful fast, and somebody on the show recently talked about maybe on Lakeshore Drive to Saville Drive, we should slow down the speeds. We could even probably fund a lot of things if we started giving out tickets. Yeah, enough on the traffic for now.
We could spend all day on traffic.
We could. And I always have a suggestion that for bus routes that don't operate on the weekend, where they have no parking signs, they should be open it up for parking on the weekends. So remember that if you're the next alderman over there.
I'll remember that.
There's a number of people running for that slot. And I think there's up to 9 or 10 people. And we always liked Harry Osterman. We didn't necessarily agree on everything, but we went way back. And he has retired, and he's endorsed somebody else. But I've heard people say there are a lot of good candidates. Why don't you give us a brief thing on the opposition? Who's on the right? Who's on the left? Why you?
Well, hey, I'm not allowed to talk about my opponents, in any sort of disparaging way. I mean,
okay.
And I don't want to, honestly. I think we see each other all the time. There are 9 other people who are running, and it is really difficult to be in this race. It's difficult to run for alderperson in Chicago with the the historical legacy of the Chicago politics behind us and influencing how that works. So I have a great respect for everyone who's in this race.
That's really great to hear. That's the kind of thing that we should have elections, and particularly in Chicago in our wards, where we have great people running against each other, and it'll all evolve to even a better and better situation.
Yeah, I think that, everybody has a deep love for this community and this ward. And so I have as somebody who also has a deep love for this community and this ward, I have to respect that. I think that I'm the best for this role for a couple of different reasons. Because I think that, right now in the 21st century in Chicago, I think that an alderperson does 3 things. Hopefully they do them all well. Here in Chicago, we have ward services is really important. That's distinct from other cities. It's making sure that the streetlights stay on, the trash gets picked up, the trees get trimmed, making sure that constituents get the things that they need every day. And then it's also making sure that the policy that get set downtown and that impacts every person is really, well translated out into the community. So an older person has to really understand not only the intricacies of the policy, but how to communicate it to their constituents. And then finally, I think the most important thing is that our older person has to have really the right values to make sure that we're supporting our most vulnerable neighbors, low income people, homeless neighbors, folks facing a lot of challenges related to maybe mobility or job access. That older person has to make sure that we're really supporting those folks. And I think of all the 10 people running, I do that. All three of those things I bring together more than anybody else.
That's good, Nick Ward. I like a confident candidate.
Yeah.
So what I'd like you to do now is to shift a little bit and tell us about yourself. I know that you come out of Detroit. I know that, which is a wonderful city.
Yeah.
With plenty of issues, some like us, but also some great cultural history up there and
Absolutely.
labor history, et cetera, et cetera. I know your parents were school teachers.
Yeah.
And union members.
Yep.
I know that you busted your ass bussing tables, waiting on tables, being in theater, doing that kind of thing. You sound like a lot of the employees we used to have at the Heartland.
Yeah.
I'm finishing my degree. I'm in a play next week. I'm working on my book. I have an art show going on. I got a kid coming, whatever it may be. But you tell us about you.
Hey, that's great. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that I'm from the suburbs outside of Detroit. I think it's important to understand because of the historical legacy of, the segregation of the Detroit metro area to really be specific. I'm actually not.
Oh, that's good.
Not from Detroit proper. I am from the suburbs outside of Detroit. My parents were public school teachers. I went to public school from all the way up until into college. And then I moved to Chicago, where I spent many, many years pursuing theater and working in restaurants. So I probably worked in, 15 different Chicago restaurants. There's only one of them that's still open, unfortunately. But I spent a lot of time, really, working alongside and with, folks who were really struggling, working with bussers and food runners who had to work multiple jobs, working off of tips, and that has its own precarity, and doing a lot of and underpaid theater work. And so I moved here to be an actor. I wasn't much of an actor, but I was pretty good at a bunch of different things. So I did some casting work, did some production management. I joined a storytelling organization that I'm still a part of called Second Story. I did write a book. I've taught classes, and I've spent just a lot of time really steeped in Chicago's artistic and cultural community. And that's what really kind of formed my thinking about how this city can better support, arts and culture workers,
I like the idea of a restaurant worker being in office, because having run a restaurant for 36 years, I know how difficult it is and how people in whatever position you're in, whether you're the dishwasher, the busboy, the janitor, the servers or the waitress to the waiters, the kitchen workers, whether it be prep to the head cook, you got to juggle a lot of stuff. You got to be able to take it as it comes and deal with it immediately while you're doing a bunch of other things. So I've never really talked about that before, but I'm sure there are plenty of former restaurant workers who do hold office, but you might be another one.
Yeah, and you're all working on a shared project together, and I think I didn't know that I was a community organizer for so many years until I had some folks really point out that, working in restaurants and working in the arts and, bringing people together around shared projects has a natural entry point into community organizing, and I think that's work that I was doing for 16 years before I really, 15, 16 years before I really got involved in local politics.
Well, Nick, what's this book about that you wrote?
Oh, well, I wrote a book of personal essays, came out about a year and a half ago. Like I said before, I'm a company member with Second Story. We tell live, true stories. And so a lot of the stories from the book began as personal tales told on stages and in restaurants and bars around Chicago. So, very proud of that. I don't anticipate to be writing another book anytime soon, but hey, you never know how this will go and what stories I might have to share, after it's over.
Well, storytelling is a great thing, whether it's in a book or in person. I know we used to do it at the No Exit one time. An author named Jeff Biggers was in town, and he had me. I told a story about driving my 40 Ford Coupe to California in 1960, and I won't go into it because it's a long story. But storytelling is good. I have a daughter who teaches at DePaul, Koya Paz. She tells stories sometimes.
Wait,
and, you know Koya?
Yeah, I know Koya.
That's my daughter.
Whoa, I did not know that. How did I not know that? Yeah,
she may not tell everybody. Who knows?
I've worked with Koya on Second Story Project, so I know her well.
Oh, that's great to hear.
All right.
That's good. So let me ask you as we close out, Nick Ward, what would be one of the first 1, 2, 3 things that you would want to see happen or do if you had the ability to do it in the city council and in our city?
Yeah, so definitely we want to make sure that a couple of ordinances right now that don't have the support that they need get the support that they need. So the first 2 that come to mind are Bring Chicago Home, which is really being pushed by a lot of unions and other progressive PACs to make sure that we're systematically addressing homelessness in our communities by building permanent supportive housing.
Right.
The other is Treatment Not Trauma, which would seek to reopen the closed public mental health clinics and expand those operations where possible across the city, so that folks experiencing mental health crises have public options, for them to really address their needs. And then, in my ward, one of the things that I would love to see is a greater investment from the city and the community in youth programs, not necessarily relying on, though I love our area nonprofits, but not necessarily solely relying on them. So I would love to see something that happened this past summer down in Pilsen in the 25th Ward. I would love to have some sort of basketball tournament or basketball league where kids could come together and play and compete in a safe and productive way, and really, activate the lakefront community with just some exciting energy. So that would be like, a little bit more of the nebulous one I'd like to see.
I like that. I'm in this group, Athletes United for Peace. We'll talk about that more. I want to wish you well, no matter where this election takes you. And I'm going to ask you one last thing. Who do you look to for advice? In other words, can you give us a little insight into your little central committee or steering committee for your campaign?
Well, my campaign is, I'm so proud to have been really supported by a number of incredible organizers here in the 48th Ward. My campaign manager went to Georgetown Law School, successfully ran an operation for Mary Oshana in Skokie, and just keeps me, grounded and on point every single day. My field director, Miracle Jenkins, comes to us from the Progressive Turnout Project in Georgia. He's just joined the team and is activating our 200 volunteers. And then I have this incredible kitchen cabinet that is full of, CTU members, other organizers in the community, folks who have worked in the arts and nonprofits, and there's just so much support for me from the campaign side. And then I'm really proud that I've been endorsed by a couple of elected officials to the west of me. So Carlos Ramirez Rosa, alderman of the 35th Ward, Daniel Espada, alderman of the 1st Ward, and a newly elected Cook County Commissioner, Anthony Joel Quesada, have all endorsed me. And so I look to them for guidance, and I'm really excited and proud to work together with them.
Well, Nick Ward, you're a hell of a guy. I think you have a good future, and I look forward to hanging out with you in person.
All right.
Watching all the things you do in your life.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you all. Have a good rest of the day.
Okay, brother, and everybody.